organization, a youth network of young activists who are striving for a more sustainable food system. And currently we're active in approximately 160 countries with over 250 communities, and of which Svin Turin, which Ottavia mentioned before, is one. I have the pleasure to spend basically my whole days on creating campaigns, creating educational activities and advocacy work underneath the umbrella of Slow Food Youth Network. And I'm, yeah, you could call me a full-time activist, food activist. So I'm very happy for that. In the time that I've been working for Slow Food Youth Network, I've been working on different campaigns. For example, around food education, around food waste. I've been working on the European policies, for example, the Common Agricultural Policy, but even we figured out campaigns to get people to go vote during the European elections. We've been campaigning for international land rights, for just general information and knowledge about sustainable food. And about that, we will tell you all today, basically within this workshop. Indeed, as Ottavia said, in the case you have a question, please let us know via the chat. Our colleague Jael will have a good look at what's happening there. I am the worst with Zoom, so I'm sorry for that. I do know a fair bit about campaigning, but like how this technology works is horrible. So in case something goes wrong with the slides, my apologies, or if I cannot find the unmute button, then sorry for that. In any case, I would like to start off with...
I will just, sorry, I forgot to mention at the beginning that we will have a Q&A session specifically at the end, but if you have specific questions throughout the session, you can start already putting them in the chat, and then we will make sure to answer all the questions or comments towards the last 20 minutes. And go on, sorry. Yeah, Ottavia?
Just a very tiny one, as I'm seeing the chat, is going to, the workshop is going to run until 4:30, just because maybe this is an information to give at the beginning.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get started, everybody. First of all, we wanted to start with explaining briefly what a campaign actually is. And a campaign, as you can read here on the screen, is a planned group of especially political, business, or military activities that are intended to achieve a particular aim. Within our network, within our grassroots movements, it's often a series of events that lead to change. As we all know, as we already checked in the beginning, we are striving for a good, clean, and fair food system. And we try to achieve that via education, via the protection of biodiversity, and via advocacy work. And in each of that pillar, it's extremely important that we carry out the right campaign. Within this event, we want to show you how you can campaign, and not just from an organized institution, but especially from you as a local activist who is working with a local community on local thematics. And to start off a campaign, the most important thing is to have a core ID. And if you see a core ID, you might think like everyone has a campaign, or everyone has an ID, but it is a step within campaigning which is often very much overlooked. The effectiveness of campaigns is often it's often depending on how strong people and the team is working on and engaged with the thematic. So once you have an ID for a campaign, you start to share this ID with your friends, with your local community, with family, or even with your colleagues at work. And it's very important to plant some seeds and to see which part of that ID resonates. And by already sharing some ideas about a possible campaign or an issue that you want to address, you might get some feedback that's very valuable for the rest of the campaign. So while you're actually at it, you're speaking with people who might be interested in joining your activity as well. And this is something super important as well, since you cannot host a campaign on your own. And in order to truly make a successful campaign, it's important to have a team around you which supports your message, your core ID, and can really help you deliver that message in the best possible way. So the first step is to plant these seeds, plant your ID in as many places as possible. The second one is to keep engaged with the people who are super interested in the core concept of what you want to do. And as soon as you've done that, you can start brainstorming on the ID. Within this campaigning workshop, we figured it's nice to go through all the steps of campaigning, and with every step, highlight a campaign we have done in the past and explain how that specific case was influenced by that specific step. So for the core ID, I would like to take you to World Disco Soup Day. It was 2016 at Terra Madre in Torino, where Caio, a Brazilian activist from Slow Food Youth Network, was presenting at the Slow Food Youth Network conference. This was basically a conference where we had the whole network together. And he was presenting his idea about the Brazilian Disco Soup Day. After a while of talking and presenting and people cheering for him, he all of a sudden had this idea like, wait, if I could do this on a national level, how cool would it be that we can do this on a global level? And this is where the core idea was born. This is how we wanted to start. And what happened was, because all he planted so many seeds with these people, that he immediately had a team of, or a task force as they called themselves, a task force of people around him who helped him translate this core idea towards a valuable concept that actually could be carried out. The final step there was to get these people engaged in a way and get them in the momentum and start brainstorming straight away. And once you start brainstorming, it's super important that you don't block any ideas. Often they're coming the most stupid ideas within a brainstorm, and that's fine. That's totally fine, because you don't have to do anything with the ideas that you've just been presented, but it can trigger something at another one of your teammates' minds. So from developing on different concepts and ideas, you can get to the most amazing ideas. And once you've had that idea identified, then you can get to the next step, which Ottavia will tell you all about right now.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Jorrit, for the first step. The second is research. What does it mean, research? Research is, first of all, research a lot. Know as much as you can about the topic you're addressing, the topic you have decided is going to be your core idea. Books, articles, podcasts, video, and also already existing actions on it. Why to do this? It's important that you understand different point of views on your core ideas, that you consider also both positive and negative aspects of the topic that you want to be the main focus of your campaign. It's important when you research, and in this webinar, Jorrit and I are going to make a lot of examples of existing mistakes we did and from which we have learned. Make sure you keep reference of what you're discovering, because sometimes at one point you will be remembering a very important data and you have no idea where this comes from. It's just in your mind. But we suggest you have, like, for example, a shared document in which you put all the information and keep the source. The more you quote sources, the more reliable are your data. We are in a period in which we understand, for example, the climate crisis has been underlined how much is important to listen to scientists and to have evidence of what the climate change is about. And also for this, we consider that research is very important, because when you want people to trust you and to understand why it's important to follow your campaign, it is important that they understand that your sources are reliable and that what you're saying are not just assumptions, but are actually concepts with evidence and that you can prove. This is also important also because when you analyze different aspects, you might not be familiar with some of the points that you want to address. You may also have ideas that you can reconsider. And in this concern, it's also important, like the second part that we have here written, that is engage with experts. What do we mean by that? It is important that you involve experts, not only professors of academics also, but not only, but all the people that are related to the topic that you have chosen for your campaign. From the tiny little project to a huge industry that works on this area. Why? Because it's important to consider all the different aspects, and it's important to show that you can't know it all. It's impossible that you, even if you are an association, an organization that already work, that is familiar with this topic, anyway, if you involve experts, it would be much better to address, even in different ways, the topic that you want for this campaign. Interview people related to the topic and ask them to assist you, and also ask them to give you an input and support the campaign. This for two reasons. First, because they, in this way, they can help you and give you even further ideas on how to develop your campaign. But also, if you involve them and you ask them, for example, a contribute like a video or photos or even a text or an interview, they can support and reshare the contents of your campaign and give even more value to the campaign that you are carrying on. So, for example, as Jorrit was saying, we will give you a concrete example on what I'm saying. And if you can skip to the next slide, you'll see this is what also we mean by research. This is us in the field before starting the campaign that we call Dieta Caporalato Free. That is a campaign run by the Slow Food Youth Network Italy, of which I've been one of the promoter and organizer. And it was a campaign against slavery and illegal employment in the agriculture fields. That is this phenomenon called caporalato in Italy. And we, before even having the idea of the campaign, we arranged this incredible formative campus with Libera. That is an association here in Italy related to the fight against mafia. And there we met many different farmers, producers, and people involved even in public administration that told us many different aspects of the topic. And this is why I'm telling you that it's not enough just to Google what you want to address, but that you ask the people. That I know that today is not easy to go and meet people outside, but anyway, with the tools that we have, try to engage as much as people as you can, because they will make the difference. And also your campaign will be much more rich. And for example, for the Dieta Caporalato Free, we had some video in which the experts, for example, journalists or writers, have told us what this phenomenon of the caporalato is. And they were involved from different parts of Italy in order to show that this phenomenon was also very widely spread all over our country. So just try to reach as many people as possible. And I think that I've covered pretty much. I think I can speak much more. So if you after have questions about how to research, I can give you further details. But I would ask Jorrit, what about the next step?
The next step is setting your goals. So once you have translated your core idea into research, and you know now basically all the parts of that specific issue, you start setting goals. What do you actually want to achieve with your campaign? And if you look into campaigning in general, you often see that they're either to raise awareness for a certain issue and really educate the crowd, or they ask to take action, or basically do something or stop doing something. In order to make this this goal more concrete, it's very important that you think about either a set or an individual specific goal. So it can be sign a petition, It can be write a letter to the European Commission. It can be that you stop using a product from a certain brand. It can be that everyone is going to their local supermarket in order to ask for different products in their stores. It can be a set of different things, but it's super important that once you have your goal ready, like, okay, I want people to change their mind, I want people to take action, that then you directly translate that into a specific thing that people can do. Because as soon as you've done that, you can actually start adjusting where your campaign should be heading. Because once you have a list of your goals, you can really set basically a sort of checklist of your campaign, what you want to carry out. So when you set your target and you know what you want to achieve, then it's super important to know who your allies are. Who can you reach with your general communication? So of course you have your inner circle, the bubble where you're already in. This consists out of friends, of family, of maybe your neighborhood, the people at the market where you normally go. It can be a lot of different people, but it's important to highlight who you already have. Then you have to see if these are the people that you actually want to reach in order to make the change that you want to achieve. Sometimes it is the case, but often it's also the case that you want to reach a totally different group of people. You might want to reach a set of consumers who don't have a certain knowledge yet about a specific thematic. Maybe you want to reach out to the government, to policymakers who can actually make a change on a political level. Or maybe you just want to reach all the chefs in the country and make sure they stop using a certain product. It's very important that you set this target really clear. And as soon as you've done that, you can identify how you target them. And in order to do that in the best possible way, I advise you to create like a persona. And a persona is a sketch of a person. And in this case, I can make it about myself to explain it to you. I am Jorrit. I am 28 years old. I am interested in sustainability and grew up on the countryside. Currently, I'm living in a big city. I am still interested in the connection to production or to small-scale producers, and I love to chat with my friends via social media. I share a lot about my discoveries around food online, and in the weekends I like to go to picnics in the local park with friends. If you know all these details, then you've heard that in order to reach me, you shouldn't use written media in order to get to me. You heard that I'm interested in social media. So you know that this person is interested on social media, and you know the thematics that he or she is most likely to look on. So in order to truly reach the right target group, it's good to create this persona. Then from there, you can see, indeed, is it going to be online? Is this person on Facebook, on Instagram? Maybe he reads a specific kind of newspaper, or maybe he even lives in a certain part of the city that you can go really offline campaigning, stand in front of a certain market, or whatever you want to do. But you did identify how you can actually reach these people. As soon as you want to create an offline action, which is created on a bigger impact, then I would say that it's important or in the case you want to mobilize more people on a specific moment in an offline situation, which is now, of course, a little bit hard to organize. But the key to these elements is always that there is some form of urgency. So if you've seen in the past few years the big protests that have been taking place, were, for example, around the Black Lives Matter situation, the climate emergency, in general, the Islamic ban that Trump released a few years ago, those were all very significant points in history where something happened and urgently people wanted to step in. And this is some sort of core driver for people to get to the streets and to really get mobilized. Of course, everyone always wants to reach like 30,000 people and mobilize them on the street, get them to the parliament and stop something straight away. But when there's not a certain form of urgency, often it's unfortunately not going to happen. So take that in consideration once you start campaigning. Regarding the set of targets and the urgency, I would like to share with you a campaign that we carried out in October, which was called Vote This Cap Down. For the people who don't know, CAP is the Common Agricultural Policy, which is a policy from the European Parliament in order to support food production within Europe. And I know I make it really small now, but in the basic essence, it supports farmers to produce food. Every few years, this CAP is being reformed and is being adjusted to the current period of time. And in the past few years, it didn't really move forward. It didn't really make sense if you look into, for example, the new Farm to Fork strategy, the European Green Deal, the Paris agreements, and all the targets that we, our generation, have been setting for our future. And when you looked into this new CAP, which will last for the next 7 years, you didn't see an ambition that's in line with what we actually wanted to achieve. So what happened is that together with the climate movement, we started an online campaign called Vote This Cap Down, where we urged as many people as possible to reach out to members of the European Parliament to literally vote this cap down, to stop the proposal done by the European Commission. This worked in a certain way. Unfortunately, it didn't stop the cap from being approved. But never have there been so many young people engaged within a political campaign with regards to food. It was amazing to see people standing up within just a few days in order to feel responsible, feel the urgency of what was going to happen and the effect that it was going to have on our future. How did we achieve this? There was a very clear communication which explained what the cap is, and not in hard words, but just really basic, just like I've done in a few minutes ago. Tell what the effect of the current of the proposal is, and what we can now do in order to make the change. And because everyone felt like, whoa, I can make a picture like this with a marker on my hand, and I can urge people to stop. We actually had people from Latin America joining. We had people from all over the world joining because everyone felt the urge like, okay, this is so important. I see it everywhere. And you can see it here in a picture from in Italy, for example, that there were so many people who just joined. And this was definitely also noticed by the European Parliament because the vote was still, like I said, not being pulled through or being cancelled, but I heard from a lot of European members of the European Parliament that they definitely got so many emails, that they got so many messages. And this is how you can really target the right people at the right moment. And this is something which is super important. And in order to define what the right person or what the right moment is, Ottavia is going to tell you more about the planning of a campaign.
Yeah, just a little bit more technical. First of all, it might seem obvious, choose a title. And be aware that choosing a title among a group of people would not be easy. And also you should take into consideration if the title you have chosen has already been taken, because many names, even simple or common ones, may have the copyright. So be aware and check and be sure that you can use the title that you have decided. And also about the hashtag that you want to use, make sure and check that nobody has used the same hashtag. And if you use an abbreviation, check if the same words or the same letters means something in another language. This might seem like, should I take so much care about it? Yes, because you can't know who can be harmed by those letters or those words. So just check it and make sure that your title is perfect and that you can use it without any troubles. Then it's very important with planning that you define your abilities and split the roles. When you start a campaign, the group will be super strong and can't wait to start, but it's important that you understand who can do what, and that you really set also responsibilities, because if you don't give responsibility, nobody feels in charge, and then it's very difficult to follow the schedule. In relation to the schedule, it's important to set a time schedule. Make sure that you have enough time to prepare all the campaign. So make sure that your goals and everything you want to create and prepare, the posts, the videos, the street actions, you have enough time and that you don't have to do anything last minute. Check if you have, for example, access to profile or the platforms that you want to use to post your contents, and also check that also everything you need, for example, when do you have to prepare a content, create even a calendar schedule if you can, and make sure to follow it. I think this is pretty important. Maybe it might be obvious, but it's important to say it again, because you never know what's going to happen, and it's much better to prepare everything in advance and then make changes after than to have everything to do the day before you have to post it. Also, in relation to time, we thought it was important to mention to check national and international days. Of course, it's not the case, for example, with the example that Jorrit was mentioning about withdraw the cap. But if you want to make your core idea something that can be addressed in any part of the year, it's important that you take into account if there is a national or an international day related to the topic that you are discussing, because on that day, for sure, the general audience would be already much more aware and would follow your inputs in a different way and with much more interest. It's important, considering your needs, also to set up a budget. For example, if you are all volunteers, or if you are considering any sponsorizations for your any promotion of your online content, or if you need to create anything that needs to be printed, or any design that you have to make, anything that you have to use like tools, make sure that you know that you have the money for that, or understand how you can provide, if you can address these needs to an association, or if you can collaborate with others and make sure that you get everything that you need. It's really important, because even if, of course, I'm sure everyone here knows how planning it's crucial, it's important that it's done in advance, because in this case, if in the first days of planning the campaign, you understand how much time you have, not only in relation to the start of the campaign, but also during the campaign, and also in relation to as a person, when are you busy, if it's going to be a hard period when you're working, or if it's going to be a holiday. Take everything into account so you're sure that you don't have to stress during the campaign. And about this, Jorrit has a great example that I would ask him to mention.
Absolutely, thank you so much. One really concrete example that I would like to highlight here is the On My Plate challenge that is currently running under the umbrella of Slow Food and Slow Food Youth Network. You might already be aware of this, and if not, I would highly urge you to go to onmyplate.slowfood.com and still register, because it's an amazing journey in order to learn more about good, clean, and fair food. And with this, I basically already explained where we are coming from the planning, because what we wanted to achieve with this campaign is that we wanted to really reach a bigger audience and educate them about good, clean, and fair food. Ideally, we would like to change their minds and change their behavior. And when you look into planning, it's super important that you also look into the statistics. For example, when you want to achieve behavioral change, you cannot do a campaign which just lasts for 2 days or for 3 days. You have to look into something on a more long term. So in this situation, we chose for a a campaign that takes participants on a journey for 6 weeks. And research, as Ottavia already mentioned before, is super important. But research has shown that when you're involved within a certain thematic for longer than a month, then it's more likely to change your behavior on the longer term. So also during a campaign, it's super important that you take care of a certain planning. So it's not just in the period before and in the preparation phase, but also in the execution phase. And this is also something where I would like to share more about, because when you start talking about the engagement, once you're done and you planned your whole campaign, you've done your research, you made a plan with who you're going to target, you set your goals, and the core idea has basically been translated to the point that you can now launch your campaign. Then it's super important to build your brand. Once you get out there, Ottavia already mentioned it, it's super important to have like a good slogan, or a title that's super clear and super well represents what you want to do, as well as for the graphics. You don't want to create a campaign around a super hard graphic, which is not being recognizable when you, for example, scroll really quick through your Instagram timeline, or when you are on TikTok and you just see a certain video, you scroll through so fast. If it's not recognizable, people won't stick. So make sure that you choose a really clear artwork, so to say. This is, for example, why with the On My Plate challenge that I just showed before, we chose for super vibrant colors with really big letters, where it's always super clear when you see this in your timeline, it's about the Slow Food On My Plate challenge. At the same time, once you define your artwork, your logo, your branding, make sure that it's also something that people would like to share. You can brand it like super strong and make something a branding that totally fits the style of your own organization, which is partly super important. But if your target is to reach out to new people, they are not so likely to really represent and carry out that specific brand. And you can compare this with, for example, fans of either a local football club or whatever. Nobody is straight from the beginning going to endorse the message of this sender. So it's super important that you have a branding which is nice, which relates to people from all over the world, depending on where your campaign is being carried out. But at the same time, it shouldn't be something that people don't feel comfortable sharing, because that just limits the potential reach of your campaign. Then once you start engaging, it's super important to start reaching out. You can start with just the beginning of your campaign and do everything by yourself. But you can also give yourself a kickstart by already reaching out to people in the background and telling like, okay, on this moment we are going to launch this campaign, and it would be great if you're joining as well. If you can share the message, and if you can really help us spread this message to as wide audience as possible, or if you want to have a really specific one to exactly this group of people. So it's super important that you, for that, relate with, for example, a group of ambassadors who really feel like, okay, this core idea, maybe I like it. I couldn't be part of the organizational team, but I definitely support it, and I want to share with my friends about it. So make sure you already have this pool of people who you know that are your basic supporters, just to get a bigger reach on the day of launch. The same is, for example, with local or national press. Make sure you send out the press release well in advance in order to really create a decent press coverage. This is, for example, the way that World Disco Soup Day was mentioned in like a lot of international media in the month before launch. And this is something we've never imagined. But while doing that, while reaching out already a month before the campaign actually started, people got so motivated that all of a sudden this campaign they heard about via Skype calls, via Facebook, via Instagram. Then all of a sudden it was in a local newspaper, and this really engaged so much more people that at the end there were so many more events planning just by the press coverage around it. So this is something super important. And then at last, you can also get involved within events that already highlight content of what you want to share within your campaign. So think, for example, about Terra Madre in this case. Is all about sustainable food and food production. This is the perfect venue, the perfect stage to really promote your campaign. Then to give a really concrete example, I would like to get back to the branding. I already said something about the On My Plate, but here you see an image of a girl with a fish. You might think like, what is this? 4 years ago, I carried out the campaign Food Education for Every Child, and we created a video where we showed the knowledge of children about food. They first show everything about their schedule, like how busy they are with all the things. They can describe the newest iPhone from the newest camera and know everything about it. They know exactly everything about their football team, but then you give them a certain product and they didn't know. And this image stuck with so many people that it went viral straight away. People started sharing, and within 2 days, we had 250,000 views on the video that we made. By that, we were able to reach the Ministry of Agricultural and Health in the Netherlands. And they started a big program in order to promote food education in primary schools, which is super important. And it all was done by a really simple video, which took a lot of work to produce, but had like really visible and recognizable images. So for example, these children with pieces of fruit or food in their hands. I see the time is running, so let's get to the final step. So we also have some time for some questions.
Yeah,
Ottavia.
I'm going to say something very brief about the post-launch. That also is something we have learned. Be prepared to the worst cases. Be prepared to answer questions that might not be very comfortable, and ask yourself and the team critical questions before posting that you know that people might address to you related to the topic. Look for further information and be ready to negative comments. For example, I would like to ask Jorrit to go on the next slide even. Okay, this is a clear example from our campaign about the Dieta Caporalato Free. As you can see, we have shown, it's written in Italian, but it's like how much should tomato sauce should cost being caporalato free. And we have used the prices based on a producer that we have met during that formative campus. That is a very small producer that is organic and hand-pick the tomato. And so the final price was this. And we knew already that it was not the price of the industry, because the price of the industry is even like, it's probably 30 cents sometimes in the discounts. And this was what we wanted to point out, but we knew what we were going to get. And in fact, if you go on our page and you check, it's only Italian, but the comments were very, very bad and were related to the fact that we were, for example, in this case, addressing an elitarian food, but we were actually supporting a small producer. So, you know, you have to be ready to answer the question and to give your point and never attack the other, and never be like the one who knows it all and wants to have and never pretend and never pretend to have the answer if you don't. It's better that you step back and listen to the others and try to have concrete discussions, giving your points and evaluating the researches that you have done. So I would go and one point that was mentioned in the previous slide was to have fun. have fun while you prepare the campaign, have fun while you launching, and try to spread your passion about the topic.
Exactly. And what I would like to add to this point, like be prepared. In the beginning, I said, don't be blocking ideas. This is the phase where you can actually block ideas. Make sure you're very critical in a controlled environment, of course, very critical to everything that you're doing. Ask yourself the hard questions before other people do it. It saves you a lot of hassle during the actual campaign. And then we get to the final step, which is the evaluation, because after a good campaign and you're done, you've reached your targets maybe or not, often we just stop and say like, okay, we see each other in the next meeting and we'll start something new. But it's super important for the sake of seeing what you can do better next time, that you evaluate really well, that you really show like, hey, did I actually reach my target group? Did I reach the goals that I set? Is the person who had this core ID, is he or she happy? Is this the ID we initially had, or did we along the way totally went into a different direction? Take your time to evaluate the campaign and really look into feedback and numbers. You can also ask participants, you can ask people who are being engaged with the campaign, what they thought about it, all in order to really learn what you can do better next time. At last, it's also very important that you, if you want, but in order to really create like a valuable material, that you see what the impact of your material, of your campaign was. So you can try to start off with a meeting or a identification of the status quo, and you can see how people changed during the campaign. You can see how your social media was growing, how your reach was getting better, or maybe even just how your own local community got so much stronger, because that's also something which can be the result of a campaign. And as Ottavia already mentioned, everything you do it while having fun, because without the fun, it's never going to work. And you just get into the process of something that you find very hard and that might be difficult to really pull through the end. Then the final part is basically, no, not the final part, I'm sorry. But what we shared with you during this campaign is basically the whole process of starting a campaign and getting it through. Of course, we can imagine that this is not everything you need to know in order to start a campaign, but this in big storylines is what you should go through. So start from your core ID, do your research, set concrete goals, start planning, get engaged with the people, make sure that the post-launch just receives as much attention as the preparation phase, and then at last evaluate and celebrate what you've done. And with this, we would like to basically start the conversation with you. And thank you so much for your attention. And in case you have any questions, feel free to reach out via this platform, or if questions come up later, reach out via the social media that we mentioned here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorrit, and thank you, Ottavia, for your wonderful presentation. You really showed all the steps that we must keep in mind when we want to start a campaign. Indeed, we have some questions from the public. We do not have much time, so I will ask you to be very brief. And I would start with a question from Ana Rosa, who basically would like to know how to advocate for her own project, basically. So she has a project that has a strong ethical idea, I guess, and she would like to know how should she be campaigning on that? Would she consider it as an ongoing campaign, or maybe you would rather suggest to focus some period around the communication about her project, for example?
I think for this, I don't know what kind of concept it is, but here I think it's really important to get back to the phase, the core ID phase. Like, okay, what is it that you have, what is it that you actually can do? How much time do you have in order to create awareness for your product or concept? If you're all by yourself, maybe it's smarter to create like a week of campaigning once a year where you really go crazy and you really put all your energy on the campaign that you want to do. But in case you have a group of friends around you or family or whoever within your concept or organization, you can also say like, okay, every month we're going to have the first day of the month, we try to gain attention for this thematic. So really see again, what's your target group, how do you reach them, and what is it that you can do, and from there see what would be the best possible way to campaign for it. I hope this answers your question.
Thank you, Jorrit. I hope so. And if not, please, Dana Rosa, write us in the chat. And then we would have a question for Ottavia to understand better, how did you face the criticism on your campaign, especially from the industry, and how hard were they, and what kind of answers you could provide to them? Indeed, it was, I understand, a very delicate and difficult situation.
Yeah, and it's a very good question, actually, because I think that we were not even prepared, even if we have thought about it, how bad the comments would be. And like some people even wrote in the comments that we were actually supported by the Italian mafia. And it really made no sense. So you just have to focus on your goal, and to, when writing and when replying to these comments, be sure, be aware and make sure that everything you quote make a sense, and try to be as much consistent and possible and coherent with your ideals, and just follow your campaign and try to explain. This is something that really works, because then they stop replying, because you just explain why you're saying this, why you're showing these data, why you are supporting a certain kind of agriculture, and at one point they just stop replying. So giving evidence and proving your points it's always the best solution.
Absolutely. No, and indeed, I believe it's extremely important that consumers and people who eat food, so every one of us knows what is behind a certain price and understand what's the real value of the food that we bring to our tables. We have another question from Laura. From your experience, how much time is needed for the organization of a campaign? I guess it's quite a hard question to answer, because it depends on the type of campaign, but maybe you can still give a bit of an overview about it.
I can give a few examples of how much time it takes. So, for example, World Disco Soup Day, which is the general event of food waste we host every year, takes approximately half a year of preparation. It's an event which takes place in over 45 countries, where we save approximately 15,000 kilos of food all over the world. In order to really create this campaign, to get local communities motivated, it's important that you take the time. And as well, we organize this with volunteers. So you have to keep in consideration that you cannot say like, okay, we just campaign for 1 week or prepare for 1 week and then we get started, because we're dependent on the availability of people. Then on the other hand, we have like way shorter campaigns. For example, the vote is kept down. Basically, the first idea to do this was 4 weeks before the vote actually went. Then it was totally silent for like almost 4 weeks. And then we thought, shit, we really have to do something about this. So basically it was 2 days of work, and we had like one of the biggest campaigns where on an online level where there were so many people engaged. And so you can do things really quickly, but you also can really take the time. It's depending on the urgency and the size and the time that you can spend on it straight away.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jorrit. And I guess now that we are much more digital, sometimes things can go viral, and that is not really under our control. Sometimes some things work and sometimes something don't. So maybe a quick question from me. Indeed, like if you have examples of things that didn't work, and if you have an idea of why they did. I know it's a very big question and we have only a couple of minutes left, but I think it's important to speak about it as well.
Yeah, if I can say something that it's also related to one of the questions that I've seen related to like how to involve older people. For example, for us, we have decided to focus the campaign on the social media. And after we launched it, my parents were like, I'm not on Facebook and not on Instagram. How am I supposed to follow you? So this is something very important, because even if the contents were amazing, people might not be able to assess it. So it's important to consider the target you want to address, but also the other people that might be interested, that are in your target, might not have the access to the tools that you have decided to work on. So yeah, also in relation to that, for sure you have to take into account, for example, considering other platforms, website, and I think this is important. I'm thinking about other mistakes. Go, Jorrit, I know you have it.
Yeah, I have something super, super concrete. Last year, 2 years ago, when the European elections were, we went to hit the streets at night with reversed gravity. We wanted to do something sustainable, and rather than spraying paint on the floor, we started cleaning places. And how we did that, we made stencils with soap, and we started polishing basically the walkway in front of the sorry, it's not the right word, but the place in front of supermarkets, and put there our slogan, vote with your fork, with a link to the website where people could, when they see it, they're like, oh, what is this? They could go to the website, see what the effect of their food consumption is on farmers, but as well which impact European policymakers have on the way food is being produced. We did that in the middle of the night. We prepared a stencil at the back of our office, and I was polishing really good, and the results were amazing. However, we had people out in, I think it was 10 cities all over the Netherlands with these stencils in the middle of the night, and we said, go to the city center of your town. Never did we think about the fact that the city centers are cleaned every day, every night. The walkway is being cleaned. So you can polish whatever you want, but you will never see the result of that. So at that specific moment in the WhatsApp groups, there were more and more people saying like, oh, this is not going to work. And we figured out how is it possible, until we saw one of these cleaning carts coming by. And we asked, how often do you do this? Yeah, in the city center, which is the area where we were, every day. But if you go to the outskirts of town, there it's being done maybe once a month. So we had to redirect our campaign at the spot and make it work. And in the end, it's worked better. But it was really something that we didn't think about in the beginning, and where we definitely learned about as well.
Thank you, Jorrit and Ottavia. Of course, a lot of it comes learning by doing. So when we do things, we also realize what are the errors and what we could have done better. We are reaching the end, and I would like to thank you again very, very much. I would like to thank the public for being active, participating, and asking questions. You will all be receiving the recording of today's session, and I would all like to ask you to answer to the survey in the chat to give your feedback, because we would like to hear from you and also learn by doing. So thank you again, and I hope to see you all soon.
Thank you so much. And yeah, also if you have any other question, please feel free to contact us, and I'm sure we'll be super happy to reply.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. In case you want to get active on a local level, go to slowfoodyouth.org and find where we are in the contact details of the group in your area. So see you there, and can't wait to start campaigning with you. Ciao.
Bye. Thank you.
The future of our planet is decided at the table, in our daily food choices. What do we know about what we eat? How do we choose? Where do we buy it? You can make a difference and contribute to a future where everyone has access to food that is good. Eating must be a pleasure for everyone. We all have a right to food that is healthy, natural, fresh, and seasonal. Clean. Being aware helps us to choose food that is good for our health and the health of our planet. Fair. Knowing our food means making choices that are fair to us, to the producers, and to future generations. Slow Food has been working for over 30 years to defend biodiversity and fight the climate crisis by promoting good, clean, and fair food for all. Support Slow Food. Let's act together for the common good. Go to donate.slowfood.com/en and follow us at terramadreselunadelgusta.com.